Good morning, everyone. I am Allison Van Dyke. I'm Executive Director of the Temple of Understanding, and I want to welcome you to this Eco-Justice for All dialogue series entitled Extractive Mining in the Congo and its Disastrous Effects on Health of Workers, their families, and the land that their food is grown on. This series is an ongoing program of the Temple of Understanding, a 62-year-old interfaith organization whose mission is to advocate for interfaith values in the secular setting of the United Nations as an NGO and around the world. Our focus for the past 11 years has been to increase the awareness of religious leaders and actors of our climate crisis and its negative impact on achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, in particular peace, justice, women's health and safety, food sovereignty, and environmental sustainability. Today, we are very honored to have as our moderator and co-sponsor, Audrey Kitagawa, JD, and president and founder of the International Academy for Multicultural Cooperation, a platform for ushering in a purposeful and a hopeful vision for humanity. She is president of the Light of Awareness International Spiritual Family, and she is also ambassador for Religions for Peace International at the United Nations and a representative of the United Religions Initiative at the United Nations. Kitagawa has been enstooled into the royal family as the Queen Mother of Development of Ajiyamanti in Ghana, West Africa, and has a school named after her in her African name, Nana Ode Anyankobea, and you'll probably have to correct me, thank you, junior high school, which she helped to build. Welcome, Audrey, and welcome to the panelists.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. And thank you so much, Allison and the Temple of Understanding for this invitation to bring together these panelists from the Democratic Republic of Congo to address the important issue of mining in that country and the impact which these extractive industries have had on the environment and the well-being of the people. The DRC is wealthy in minerals and precious metals and gems. It has substantial gold, cobalt, and high-grade copper reserves. It covers a landmass that make it the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa. It is widely considered to be the richest country in the world regarding natural resources. Its untapped deposits of raw minerals are estimated to be worth in excess of US $24 trillion. In 2019, mine production of cobalt in the DRC totaled 100,000 metric tons, accounting for 70% of global production. The DRC was the third largest producer of industrial diamonds in 2019, contributing about 21% of global production. The country boasts some of the highest quality copper reserves globally. International mining companies attracted by high-grade and low-cost mines are increasingly attracted to the DRC's copper wealth, situated in the copper belt in the southern part of the country. In 2019, the DRC produced 1.43 million tons of copper, up 19% over 2018, and since 2018, far greater production. With operating costs that are lower than traditional gold-producing countries like South Africa, DRC's gold mining sector is also witnessing renewed interest from mining companies. The DRC is also wealthy in uranium, platinum, diamonds, lithium, coltan, oil, and every major resource which everyone wants to have. Today, we will hear from three persons from the DRC who are familiar with the effects of the mining industries on their respective communities and the people. Our first speaker will be Professor Mutombo Nkulu-N'Sengha. Professor Mutombo was born and raised in the DRC. His father was a primary chief of the Luba people, comprising of approximately 10 million people. Professor is therefore an African prince. He speaks 8 languages. He holds 3 master's degrees in philosophy, theology, and in African American studies. He has a Ph.D. in religion and human rights. Professor, please feel free to share with us.
Thank you, Divine Mother. I did title my talk, Capitalists Without Capital and the Nationalists Without Nation, Rethinking Mining Terrorism and the Impoverishment of Africa and the DRC. What I would like to do is give just a few talking points, because Divine Mother told me we are going to use this style of a conversation. So hoping that during the Q&A, I can clarify the points. So here's what I have prepared. Number 1, the African paradox and prevailing myth on the root causes of poverty and social misery. I can just point out a few ones. We hear very often people involved in development and articulating theories that Africa is poor because it's overpopulated, that the African soil is not fertile enough. And there is a scholar who wrote abundantly and was even connected with the United Nations, who basically said, if you just draw the line in the middle on the planet, you will see that all the underdeveloped countries are in the south and the developed in the north. And they said the reason is the climate, where the climate is so bad, too hot, too cold, etc., etc. So these are the myths which have been articulated to distort the fact that one of the leading causes, of course, is colonization, which has not ended, and it does continue again until now in what we call neo-colonialism. There is an expression in Africa that during the slave trade, the trader tried to take Africans out of Africa. And during colonization, neo-colonialism, they tried to take Africa away from the Africans. Our second point is the wealth of Africa and the DRC, mining in the general context of the scramble for African natural resources. This is a very important point because minings are not isolated. They are part of the entire scramble for African natural resources. Here, I want just to point out one important case. During the time of King Leopold, who committed one of the earliest major genocide of the 20th century, to such a degree that a global human rights campaign in the age of telegraph was created. They touched even the US president, the Archbishop of Canterbury. So during that time, the issue was ivory and especially rubber. Edmund Morel in England wrote a book specifically titled Red Rubber. And because of that, the population of the country was reduced by half. Now, rubber was used for tire of cars. And today, as Divine Mother pointed out, Congo is one of the largest producers of cobalt and coltan we use in our cell phone. But cobalt, of course, is the miracle element for the production of batteries for electrical car. So what is viewed as a kind of green revolution, it's not necessarily green for the population of the Congo. And then 3, I prepared what I call the various plagues that are connected or generated by the mining business. I will not go through all of this. I will try to articulate them in the Q&A. The major question then is, then what? Is there a way out. And here I try to propose the notion of Bumuntu, which is known in South Africa as Ubuntu. It was fostered by Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu. It's known everywhere in Africa. Is the notion that a human being is not fully human. He is like a pendulum between being human and the possibility to lose one's own humanness. And this is done in terms of three categories: right way of thinking, right way of looking at people, because I can hurt or love somebody just through the glance, and also right way of action, so good deed and good speech. These are the four pillars which are used in African tradition to see if a human being is a genuine human being. I shall point out here that today Africa is fully dominated by Christianity and Islam, almost half-half. Traditional religions, although they kind of disappear in terms of organized religion, even though they do survive in various parts of the continent, they still do provide the fundamental African outlook on the world, the fundamental vision. So much so that in Christianity, it has been understood that for Christianity to take hold in Africa, it needs to be Africanized. And to be Africanized, African Christianity has to take into account the values and the modus vivendi and modus operandi of African traditional religion. This way, a theologian, Mulago Gwachikala Musharamina, created a major center in Kinshasa for the articulation of African traditional values. And in the Anglophone Africa, we also have John Mbiti, who is a major theologian. So this is in a nutshell the fundamental point that I have prepared. And as you can see on the screen, I came to do this preparation because I saw this article, which was published in 2016 in the Washington Post by Todd Frankel, who stated emphatically that the world depends on Congo for cobalt, a strategic mineral widely used for space vehicle, etc., as you can see. And yet, the population in the Congo are among the poorest of the poor. 2 points are relevant here. One is that the exploitation of minerals is the major cause of violence, whether through internal conflicts, and of course the various wars which have been fostered by foreign powers. Number two is the major cause of pollution, pollution of water, pollution of air, pollution of the soil, which affect agricultural produce. In this way, it's a major source of suffering. I had a conversation several times with Divine Mother where I said that in the Congo, the province of Katanga, we have reached a point of genetic mutation due to pollution that many mothers give birth to children which are deformed or without limb, etc., etc. In a nutshell, so this is what I have prepared. And as you can see, the picture I put here, the argument that Africa is overpopulated does not really hold. As you know, Africa has less people than India. India has more or less 3 million square kilometers of size, while Africa has 30 million square kilometers. Even if we were to take the Sahara Desert out and the Kalahari Desert, those constitute around 10 million square kilometers. So we still have 20 million square kilometers where people can live. So Divine Mother, I think I will stop here for the moment so that we can clarify many other points when we get questions.
Thank you so much, Professor. And let's move on to Dr. Mindje Kolomba Bertin. So we're very happy to see you, Dr. Mindje. And, he teaches pediatric medicine at the School of Medicine, University of Kamina in the DRC. He is also certified in the fundamentals of epidemiology and has specialized training in rescue procedures. So Dr. Mindje, please share with us. You now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madame Audrey, for this occasion you give me to participate in this great international meeting concerning impact of mining in the Congo. I want to speak about the impact of mining on the health of Katanga population in the Republic Democratic of Congo. As you know, the exploitation of minerals remains until now a major public health problem in Katanga in general and in the cities of Kolwezi and Lubumbashi in particular. Many diseases such as lung and skin cancer, febrile gastroenteritis, neurological disorders, leukemia, respiratory problems, cardiovascular diseases, mental radiation, skin eruption, and birth defects might be environmental consequences of mining. The Katanga region, now divided in 4 administration provinces, Okatanga, Lualaba, Olomami, and Tanganyika. Its area is around 497,000 kilometers square. It's approximately the size of Spain, with the total population of 6,375,000 inhabitants in 2015. Concerning the soil of Katanga, we know that the Katanga Plateau is home to many livestock and agriculture farms. The east and the south of the province contain very rich deposits of cobalt, copper, iron, radium, uranium, and diamond, and so on and so forth. So the exploitation of these minerals has some harmful effects on the health of the population in this region of the Republic Democratic of Congo. Among that, we are going to see the water pollution and public health risk. The community suspects that the construction of mining works for the conservation of host water, even liquid tributaries, does not respect the standard of control, and that could have consequences on surfaces water. At Musonoi, for example, it's one village around Kolwezi. Health workers informed us that respiratory problems and diarrhea are very common in the village, and this fact is directly related to mining activities of Kamoto Copper Company. The occupants of Lualaba village denounced the fact that the water of Kando River is polluted following the overflow of the settling basin of the Mutanda Mining Company. When we tried to ask them, they said that we follow the responsible for the discharges which polluted our soil, destroy the fields, and which go into our river. They promised to build a basin to divert discharge waters, but nothing was done. The acid from their discharge are discharged into our river, in which our people participate, in which our people practice fishing, sorry. So this river is not profitable as before. And around Mineral and Metal Group Company, the inhabitants of the village of Kilongo believe that the Kifuamazi River is also exposed to pollution. Some attending doctor of Kilongo affirmed the presence of several diseases, especially those related to waterborne disease, such as diarrhea and rashes. These diseases are explained by the fact that the water no longer flows from the tap, so the population draw polluted water from the Kifuamazi River. As you can see the picture here, young boys going to fetch water in the Kifuamazi River, and this water, you will see that it's a polluted water. A part of the water pollution, there's also the degradation of biodiversity and soils. Here, communities believe that the environmental degradation caused by mining activities has direct impact on their livelihoods. The pollution of the Kando River and Lualaba has consequences for fishing, for example, and fishing is the main source of subsistence income for the inhabitants of villages of Kapaso, Lualaba, and other villages around. They said that to date, fishing is no longer profitable due to the presence of heavy metals in the river, according to the speech of some farmers. Farmers have also expressed their dissatisfaction with the Russian mining company. They said that they no longer know how to pick up mushrooms, caterpillars, because of degradation of the soil. They confirmed that the fruit trees no longer produce fruit as they did before the company arrived. They declared again that their 5 fields were contaminated with rodent insects. So, in short, they said that they've become poorer than before. And communities in Lwilu and Kapata villages expressed concerns on land degradation. To these are added the large-scale occupation of land by mining company, which would explain the decline in agricultural production and the increase in incidence rate of the malnutrition in Lualaba, as you can see, from 6.2% in 2009 to 15% in 2020, according to the declaration, the publication of SEF in 2020. Concerning air quality and vibration noise, complaints related to air pollution as well as noise have been documented with communities surrounding Mutanga mining in Kolwezi, mineral metal groups, and Rwashi mining around Lubumbashi. The local communities of these areas told us that they are inhaling dust released by the mine, which causes chronic cough. It even seems that air there is often laden with particles. At the Tasolo clinic, for example, a nurse informed us that respiratory problems and diarrhea are very common in the village. It should be noted that the region of South Katanga are full of asbestosis. And this is what, among other things, explained the increase in lung disease cancer in communities neighboring mining companies, according to the report of Tenke Fungurume Mining in 2013. Concerning noise and vibration, we saw that vibration is associated with many types of equipment used in mining. Blasting is considered the most significant source. The vibration affects the stability of infrastructure, building, and the life of people living near the operation of large surfaces mine. The local communities of mineral metal groups and Russian mining companies said that during mining operation, there are practically 3 kinds of environmental impact that they experience: noise pollution, air pollution, and even their houses are experiencing cracks. You can see here the picture of a house with cracks because of the equipment used in mining exploitation. A part of this, there's also other effects of mining in Katanga. there is generally an increase in the rate of congenital malformation, which may be due to natural irradiation of uranium or other minerals exploited in Katanga, but which the people or the population wrongly attributes to ancestral spirits angry because of the absence of well-conducted quality studies in this area. To conclude,
Dr. Mindje, thank you so much. You're just getting into a really fascinating area here about the spirit world. And I think that would be a really a wonderful area for us to delve into more deeply as part of the cultural context of the Congo and their belief system. So, but if we could have that develop more in the question and answer period, that would be really wonderful for our viewers. But at this time, if we could move on to Father, hold on just a second, Father Muhigirwa Ferdinand. He is a Jesuit father and president and rector of Loyola University of Congo, where he is a professor of social philosophy. He is an expert in mining in the DRC and a board member of the Episcopal Commission for Natural Resources of the Observatory of National Episcopal Conference of Bishops of Congo. He is also an expert of development and mining governance of the Congo. So, Father Ferdinand, we're very happy to have you on today's program. We had some connection problems, but I'm very glad to see you with your headset on. And are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. And we can also hear you. So now, if you could now take the floor. So you now have the floor for your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. I will present my small presentation in 3 points. The first one will be what I call an existential paradox in DRC, because we have a very rich, potentially country, but a very poor country. So we have that paradox between being a potentially rich country, but at the same time, very poor country. When we see the rich side of DRC, we can say that at the ecology or climate, we are the second biggest forest in the world. We have a very rich and fertile land, around 130 million hectares of arable land. And on the side of energy, we have this big dam, Inga Dam, in DRC with the Congo River. But also we have, I think, a lot of wealth with the mining. And here I will just...
Okay, our apologies. The internet connection can be very, very difficult with the Congo. And let's proceed with our question and answers, because there's so much that we would like to have developed further from your primary presentations. So, Professor Mutombo, with respect to mining in the DRC, it's generally being conducted, I understand, by foreign companies from China, Canada, the US, Switzerland, and other European companies, which promise roads, power grids, and other infrastructure improvements, as well as other financial benefits. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel that the benefits have been felt at the grassroots level in the communities? And are these foreign companies keeping the promises that they've made?
Thank you, Divine Mother. The short answer is no. As Father Ferdinand said, and there are many studies done on that, the salary of people in the Congo and the whole country is among the 5 poorest nations in the world. Divine Mother, you came to Congo, you notice many people work for $50 to $100 per month for those who have a decent job. Dr. Mindje told you that assistant professors at the University of Kamina have also very low salary, even though there are people who have high salary, but it's a very small minority. In fact, it's interesting, if you want to make money in the Congo, you go into politics. The politicians are the people who have a huge salary. Now, of course, the majority of people in Africa are still living in rural area. And there, as you pointed out, the infrastructure is not good. If people produce what they have to do in the agriculture, they can't even bring it to the village. Congo is vast, and you travel usually via plane, which is expensive, but in other areas, roads are very bad. So that's the major paradox we've been talking about. But the key point, which is important to raise here, and I conclude here, is that it doesn't seem to change. From ancient time to today is an ongoing process. And as you know, that's the reason why many young people are dying in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to escape and go to Europe. When I was in Europe, I saw it's not only people from North Africa, even from the Congo, including women also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Mindje, you were mentioning in your presentation about the defects, birth defects resulting from exposure to toxic metals. And have you seen infants born with these birth defects as a physician practicing in your community from the mining pollution?
Yes, I've seen many infants' birth defects from mining pollution.
And I wanted to ask you a question, whether these birth defects are also as a consequence of the parents of these children working in mining-related jobs, or is it a generalized effect of the environment created, the pollution created, and the contamination created by the mining companies? Or is it both? So please feel free to share with us.
These birth defects are a more generalized effect of the environmental in mining communities being contaminated. However, parents working in the mining are at high risk of birth defects, but it's a generalized situation for environmental pollution.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to Father Ferdinand.
So I was at the second point, trying to mention some positive effort in the mining sector in DRC. And I'll mention maybe 5 or 6 small points, just mentioning them. We have a matrix of economic governance that has been signed by the DRC government, the World Bank, and the IMF. The second positive, I would say, effort is that the mining production is increasing. I don't give figures here about copper, cobalt, coltan, and gold. And also in the mining sector, we have the labor market. We have around 50,000 people, employees in the mining sector in DRC. Although, as Professor Mutombo was saying, they're very poorly paid, and the figure he gave are correct, between 50 and 100 US dollar per month. I would mention also as a positive effort, the ITI reports. That is, let's say, it's requiring from the companies to publish what they pay to the government states. But at the same time, they are going to the government state to see what are they doing with the money that the government is taking from the mining companies. That means the royalties, what they call, I don't know the expression in English, pas de porte. So it's a lot of money that's going on, and it's being given by mining companies to the government, and the ITI platform will go and check also what the government is doing with the money. And I would say also that the positive sign is the mining code that has been signed in 2018 with some, I would say, positive outcomes in terms of the royalties that in the past used to be paid to the central government in Kinshasa. And from there, they were going to the province and to the local community. In the past, it used to be 15%. Now it's 20%. And that money was not reaching the local population. It was being stopped either by Kinshasa or by the main town in the province. But in the new mining code, it said that that money should be given by the mining company straight to the local community. For example, in Tenge Fungurume, you have a mining company there. They will not send the money to Kinshasa, but they will give it straight to the city of Fungurume. And now let me mention some negative economic and social and environmental impacts. We know that the mining is a very high activity for the environment and the livelihood of the community. And Professor Mindje mentioned some, I would say, negative impact of the mining activity on the health of the people. So we have a very poor contribution in the mining sector to the annual budget in DRC. Now it's around 30% of the money that the mining company is giving to contributing to the annual budget. And it's really very, very poor. If we take into account the increased production of the mines. In the past, to give you a figure, in the past, in the 80s, Jeka mine was producing 500,000 tons of copper, and it was contributing to the annual budget 50%. With half with 500,000. Now we have 1.5 million tons of copper, and we are around 30%. That's it's really very, very poor. And about social justice, I just mentioned the poor salary, but also we have the bad effects on the environment. And here we can mention the displacement of the population. When the mining company are signing contracts in Kinshasa, they will be given land. For them to exploit, to extract the minerals, they will take, I would say, a lot of number of people, local people, and displace them without compensation. Sometimes done, but very poorly. I went to Fungurume and I saw some houses built by the US company, but it was not equivalent to what they have the displacement, because people are living there. It's not only houses, but also their livelihood. They will have some food there, they will cultivate, they will have water. It's the environment and the culture that is being destroyed. And you have the pollution on water, rivers, air, erosion of soil, negative impact on agriculture. And also, all this is to say that the mining activity have very bad social, environmental, and economic impact on the population. I will end by mentioning the Article 58 of the DRC Constitution, which says, I quote, "All the Congolese have the right to enjoy the wealth of the nation. The state has the duty to redistribute the wealth of the nation equitably and to guarantee the right to development." This is the aim, but in practice, this is not being done. So I think this is the challenge. I would say that we should work, organize ourselves so that this article of the Constitution should be implemented, because we know that the country is rich, but what is coming out of the country is being used by, I would say, mining companies, and the population is remaining in poverty and misery. So this is what I can say, and I'm ready to put some elements or answers to the question that can be asked.
So let's go back to Professor Mutombo. I have another question that I'd like to ask you. You know, there seems to be what I hear from the panelists today, that there seems to be an irony, you know, the goal of creating a clean energy source, like, for example, batteries instead of combustion engines. But when we juxtapose that with the damage that the mining does to the environment, I mean, how do you reconcile this this irony that's going on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. This is a major issue where there is a disconnect, for instance, between human rights activists and NGO in Europe and what is happening in Africa. Now, this is supported by many people in the West. We are going to have an electrical car. This is good for the environment. But many, they don't pay attention to what the father and Dr. Mindje said, how the exploitation of mining is toxic, and also how people are displaced, or those who work in the mine have very salary of misery. So I think this is a major issue. I think the bottom line is that we need a global solidarity. It's not the West against Asia or Africa. These problems have to be taken into account. People have very low salary. The father said that clearly. If people now, they are displaced and they're not compensated. And, you know, I often say it can be easy to be poor in an African village when you have access to your river to fetch your water. You can grow your own food than being homeless in a big city. But when the land is taken out, everything collapses. And just to conclude here, I think Anisha may raise when we have the spiritual issue, then you start to have social breakdown, accusation of witchcraft growing, families displaced. So you have pollution, somebody is married, they cannot give birth, and then somebody is accused of being a witch. So these things have tremendous implications in society.
Professor, I'd like to follow that up with you and with respect to what Dr. Mindje was actually saying in his primary presentation. So that goes to the question of the traditional indigenous practices. I know you had indicated that Christianity and Islam are almost 50-50 in the DRC, but there is this aspect of indigenous practice with respect to the religious, social, the livelihoods, the lifestyle, so the cultural aspect. So it sounds as if it has maintained a foothold, especially based upon what you just shared in the lives of the people, in spite of the many changes and the history of the Congo. So can you share further about this aspect?
Thank you. Just to be clear, the 50-50 is for the whole African continent. Because Congo is largely Christian. When I left Congo, Muslims were around 2%. I heard some studies saying that they are around 10% now. So we have few Muslims. There is Catholic and Protestant. And because of colonization, it's a heavily Catholic nation. Yes, because of colonization, the continent is now dominated by Islam and Christianity. By the way, just to give you a picture very quickly, you take the map of the continent. The north is largely Islamic. West Africa is a mixture, some Muslims and Christian. Central Africa is largely Roman Catholic. And then east and southern part of Africa largely Protestant, more or less. That's the situation. So the traditional society are not, traditional religions, they do survive as a worldview. And but what I was saying is, yes, they had their own issues, but there was this notion of Ubuntu or Bumuntu, which is very important. I remember that in 1970, the Society of African Culture, which is connected to Présence Africaine, said that African traditional religions are the foundations of the values of African civilization. And as I was saying, and I think that the father can testify, there is a huge effort to Africanize Christianity, but Africanize to what? It means to pay attention to these positive traditional values. I conclude here by quoting Bishop Bakole, who wrote a book titled Chemin de Libération, Path to Liberation. He had this interesting quote. He said, if our ancestors could come today, they will not recognize their children because there is nothing African in the way the elite behaves, and even sometimes they comment people. So I think this notion of traditional values, which has been belittled, they are still there. They are encapsulated in African languages, in the proverbs. And this is the way ordinary people look at somebody, say, this person is a good human being or is a witch, and so on. So I think this notion of traditional value, as you know, Divan Madenda concludes here, the issue for Africa has been the cultural genocide. It's not only the taking away of the land, but when people destroy the history of a people, they say, you were nothing, you were just monkeys in the bush, we came to civilize you. This has been very, very harmful. And I remember an African scholar saying that to some degree, the people who were more harmful to Africa were not the soldier and the politician, but sometimes missionaries, because they were welcome as people of God. But then when you say that people had no values, so you are shooting at the very heart of you create alienation. And when people are alienated, they are incapable to take their destiny in their own hands. So I conclude here because we don't have time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Mindje, you were giving some very horrifying information about the impact on the health of the people in the Congo. And I wanted to ask, with respect to medical care, is there sufficient medical care that can be provided to the people in the community in light of the tremendous health impact that's being caused and the suffering caused by the extractive industries?
There's no sufficient care that is given to population victims of mining pollution. As you know, they are working to survive. All what they earn is for their daily day. No one is taking care of them. I think there's no sufficient care for them.
So if we were to have a request about the kind of care that is needed, what would you say would be the priorities on the kinds of care that the people would need from your observation in treating them?
The priority for taking care for these people living around mining, I think the good care is the prevention. We must do all our best so that children and pregnant women, even women who are not pregnant, not work in the mining. And the other thing that we can do, I think, is that they must have hospitals which are highly equipped so that they can be able to treat them when they get sick, because they are working in villages where there aren't even hospitals for taking care of them. So if they get sick, they die without care. I think the priority may be building hospitals of high technicity so that they can be taken in charge.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask for conclusory comments at this point in time, but there was a question in chat from Allison, and I believe indications were made that mining companies from China, Canada, United States, Switzerland, and other European countries have also been the primary countries from which these mining companies have come forth from. So anyway, if you have any further questions, you put them in the chat box. We'll be very happy to provide answers later. But due to our time constraints, I'm going to ask for conclusory comments now, from beginning with Professor Mutombo. Professor, what would you like our audience to take home from our conversation today?
Yeah, I think that the first point is awareness, like Divan Madhu, what you are doing with creating this kind of panel. as I pointed out earlier, there is a disconnect between activists here who even think that they are doing good things for the poor people, but they may not have good information in terms of what is happening on the ground. With regard to mining specifically, I think maybe to lobby, to have people in mass media who have some power to create the visibility of these issues. Dr. Mindje said people don't have access to any care. You know, Divanma, there is no compensation whatsoever when people suffer from these things. Myself, I grew up in Lubumbashi, and when you see the area where they refine copper, that smoke, when it comes down following the wind, it's in the middle of the city. People cough and you feel on your chest as if you had pepper. And we just grew up like that. There is no compensation whatsoever. And I think it requires a major organization, networking between religious people, human rights activists, but first and foremost, to have clarity and good information in terms of what is happening on the ground, and especially for people to know that we are in this together. This planet is one little village. What happens somewhere doesn't only stay there, it does also affect all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mutombo. So Dr. Mindje, could we have your conclusory comments, please? We just have about a couple of minutes before we have to close the program.
Yes, thanks, Madam Audrey. I think the problem of mining in Congo is not its own, but it's the problem of all the world. There's many things to do again in Congo to preserve the life of its population. I think this problem must be a concern of everybody, if possible, so that we can save lives of many persons dying in Congo without care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Father Ferdinand, if we could have your conclusory comments, and then I will close the program.
I would say that we need a global solidarity between the North and the South concerning the mining activities. And I believe that if we can join our efforts in terms of research, studies, but also advocacy, I believe in advocacy, we can really push the mining companies to be more transparent, accountable, and pushing them to work really for the well-being of the local population, without forgetting that they are doing business, but at the same time, there's the well-being of the population that they have to take into account.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panelists today who have really brought us greater awareness about the mining situation in the DRC. And as we close today's program, let us recall and remember what Professor Mutombo said about Bumuntu, the authentic or genuine personhood, which is embodied in the concept of a good heart and dignity and self-respect. Bumuntu stands as a goal of human existence and as the sine qua non condition for genuine governance and genuine religiosity. And may we remember that our connection to the earth and each other is inextricably intertwined, and no one acts in isolation, for the actions of one has impact upon the whole. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll turn the floor over now to Allison with our deepest appreciation to you and the Temple of Understanding.
Audrey, thank you so much. This was absolutely a fascinating program. And I especially want to thank our co-sponsor, the International Academy of Multicultural Cooperation. And of course, the speakers that you've brought together today have been fascinating, helped us understand an issue that's critically important for our world. So thank you all so very much. Our next program will be our UN Commission on the Status of Women on March 21st at 12 noon, and it's entitled Women's Leadership on Climate Change, Coastal Ecology and Native Wisdom. We are featuring Indigenous elders from the coasts of Maine and Louisiana discussing, very similar to this, the destructive practices of mining on their ancestral property. So thank you all, and it's just been really wonderful. I believe strongly in the global solidarity that we have with all of us, and I hope that we can continue to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.